Hello class, today we're going to talk about a new topic of study, matrices. Very exciting. Back in the day there used to be a movie called The Matrix, and this is really cool because I like that picture from there. At this point I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, not that it has anything to do with what we're going to study with matrices, but let's start there. So matrix is the singular of this. It would be matrix, and matrices is the plural of it, meaning you have more than one. So you will see with the X a lot, like this one state the dimensions of each matrix, but if I'm talking about adding matrices or multiplying matrices, the X will be replaced by the CES, like in English. Okay, or language arts class. The first thing we're going to learn is how to determine the order, dimensions, or I like to just call it the plain old size of our matrices. Now, when I think of the size, there's two things you need to really know. You need to be able to tell me the rows and the columns. How many rows by how many columns? By columns. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so the first thing I notice is, oh my gosh, it's not alphabetical, and everything we've been doing is alphabetical. So what I like to think of is this nasty soda we had at my high school called RC Cola. I don't know if anyone's ever had it before, but RC Cola helps me with matrices. Basically, picture Coke or Pepsi and put a gallon of water in it, and that's RC Cola. Okay? The other thing I want to point out is this word by. Sometimes they'll use the word by. Sometimes they'll replace it with an X. So either of those will work for us. So when you see that by, it could be replaced by an X. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so when I think about this as well, I think about 2x4s. You remember 2x4s from like Home Depot or Lowe's? If they sell a piece of wood, they tell you its dimensions, and they usually put like the number by the other number. So it's very, very similar to that. All right, so this first one here, if you look, this is a matrix. It's basically numbers that are kind of organized in rows and columns with brackets on the outside. Those brackets are the notation for it. Just like arrays have the arrow on one side above it and vectors have their notation, every math has its proper notation, and a matrix will be no different. It has these lovely brackets on the outside of it. It really reminds me of a table without the lines on the inside of it. So this matrix here, each one of these values inside is called an entry. Okay, so this guy right there is an entry. All of these are entries. Entry. Okay, so this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 entries in it, but it's made by rows and columns. All of your rows are going to go this way. Like this is row 1, like you row a boat horizontally. This is row 2. This is row 3. And finally, I have row 4. So these two guys are in row 1. These two guys are in row 2. These two guys are in row 3. These two guys are in row 4. Now, the other thing it's going to have are columns. Columns go up and down, like Roman columns. So this right here is column 1. And this right here is column 2. So this matrix, if I would look at the rows by the columns, there are 4 rows. By, I could put the word by, or I could put an X, and I'll show you that too. And there are 2 columns. This is a 4x2 matrix. So our big goal today is to be able to tell me what the dimensions are of a matrix. So the other way that I could write it would be 4x2. This is my preferred way only because it's the least amount of writing. All right, so I'll put 4 so you can see that there. Okay, so we're just going to do a bunch of examples of this today. Basically, we're going to be able to tell me how many rows, how many columns, and if I ask you where an entry is, you need to be able to tell me. That's our objective of this video. So, examples, state the dimensions. Again, dimensions means the size, blank by blank. Dimensions are the size, 2 by 4, whatever the heck it is. Okay, then identify the position of the circled entry in each matrix. So for example 1, there are 3 entries. That doesn't really help me with size really, but what I want to do is I want to go across this way, and I see that I have 1 row. Then I'm going to do my columns. I could do column 1 here, column 2 here, and column 3 here. There are 3 verticals I could draw, like if I had to draw a vertical line that would hit each of those entries. So this is 1 row and 1, 2, 3 columns. This is a 1 row by 3 columns. Dun, dun, dun. There's your first answer. Now, the second part of this answer asks me to identify the position. So the position would be, tell me what row and what column it's in. So I need to do this notation a little bit differently. I'm not going to put an X in between it because then it would talk about the size of the entire matrix. If I'm talking about entry 50 here, it is in row 1 and column 1. So I'm going to put R1, C1. Fantastic. There's your second entry, or second answer. We're ready to move on. Number 2, I have this lovely matrix here. This is what we call a square matrix. Now think about the properties of a square. A square has the exact measurement for each of its angles, but it also has the exact measurement for each of its sides. So this will have the exact same number of rows and the exact same number of columns. This is a square matrix, which is like, oh, awesome. So I have 1 row. That's these 3 entries. Row 2 are these 3 entries. And row 3 are these 3 entries. Here is column 1. Column 2. And column 3 has the entries for 0 and 3. So this is a 3 by 3. What do you think makes a square matrix? When your rows match your columns. Oh. All right, now I want you to tell me where is entry -3. This circled entry is in column 2, but first it's in row 3. Remember, RC colon, R first, C second. Okay, so I need to write that it is in row 3. It's where row 3 meets column 2. All right, next one. That 1/2 is kind of large like that, but don't get it twisted. That's one lovely entry. If I drew a horizontal to hit 1/2 and 4 and 1/4, that would be row 1. 5, -9, and 5 are row 2. Columns, 1/2 and 5 are in column 1. 4 and -9 are in column 2. 1/4 and 5 are in column 3. This is a 2 rows by 3 column matrix. It is a 2 by 3. Here. I don't really need to circle it, I just was before. Now, 1/4 is where row 1 and column 3 meet. All right. Let's go to page 2. In page 2, I have some practice problems here that says state the dimensions of the following matrices. What entry is in this is the circled value in? So I went through and I found these lovely matrices online, and I found I went through and I circled just a particular number to see how you guys could do. All right. So I'm going to have you guys try these 4 problems, and that's our lesson for today. Tomorrow we're going to start with you just creating a matrix, and then I'll go over a little bit more of this for a review, and then we'll move on to something really easy as well next. I hope you guys are well and safe and had, if you're celebrating Easter, a wonderful one, and I will talk to you soon.